So, the 4K and Blu-ray editions of Christopher Nolan's Tenet have finally released around the globe, and I thought it would be a good idea to approach a video that looks at the behind-the-scenes details in the making of Tenet's special features. This involves the production, the complex action, the filmmaker and cast approaches, the music, and much more. I'm going to be presenting these interesting elements and adding my own thoughts towards them in the aim to deepen our knowledge of how Christopher Nolan was able to craft an authentic original spy thriller. This analysis might contain brief spoilers, so if you do happen to be someone who hasn't seen the film yet, then I would recommend watching this video after you've seen it. If you want to see more on the film in the future alongside other movie releases in 2021, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. But without further ado, let's dive into the behind the scenes details for Christopher Nolan's Tenet. So as the cast and crew began talking in this featurette, they introduced it by discussing why they made the film and the overall approach to it. They each stated that they went from having no idea how they would pull Tenet off to feeling astonished at delivering such a mammoth of a task. They began their process by scouting all over the world for talents and locations to film the globe-trotting spy epic. This included Pärnu Highway and Lagna Road in Tallinn, Estonia, Amalfi in Italy, areas of Mumbai, the Nysted Wind Farm in Denmark, the Oslo Opera House in Norway, and of course London. There was also an interesting piece of detail surrounding the consultant who was on set to oversee the physics and scenes which used entropy, which involved Kip Thorne, who famously worked with Nolan on Interstellar with the science involving the wormholes and black holes. It was in these introduction chapters where we also saw images of the models used for the action scenes, such as the plane set and the full location of Stalsk 12. The planning, which included these models, were huge in terms of effort and organisation amongst the crew with regards to how they would shoot most of this for real and plan each shot of a particular scene. Nolan backs up his intention by explaining that the film was meant to be seen the way it was cinematically filmed, as the concept of inversion is something you have to see on the screen to fully engage with. It's as if he was critiquing large-scale cinema and cinema itself as a lens through time. But following this, we learn that they met this approach with the casting for the film. They set out to adopt an international cast to meet a mind-bending and large-scale end-of-the-world threat. Nolan and Emma Thomas explain that there are often cynical characters in the spy film genre, and that John David Washington's the protagonist gave a different entry point to the film, as he brought a certain warmth in his relationship with characters like Kat and also Neil. But primarily, it was said that he was the right entry point through his overall motivation, which involved plunging himself into something extreme and abstract. It's also seen in this featurette that all the costume designs for his character and other characters reflected their motives and scenes with which they appear in. A good example is Kat's red costume, which helps identify her presence as not inverted with characters such as Sator in the car chase sequence. These are smaller details that on rewatch make the whole experience much more enjoyable, detailed, and reflective of the ongoing narrative. To make the project highly rewatchable, however, they needed to infuse the film with a level of complexity surrounding the philosophies at play. They talked about the filmmaking tricks used and the complexity, with Nolan mentioning how practical effects are limited in many films today. Like on previous films such as Inception and Interstellar, Nolan and his team tried to use different tricks when filming the action so that the audience can't work out how they did it, and in turn, they become immersed in what is happening on screen. A good example we saw in the behind the scenes featurette was for the Rotaz vault scene. This was apparently the first scene they shot for the entire film, and it seemed incredibly difficult with all the different versions they had to plan out. It acted as a moral boosting piece of training for the higher technicality at play in later scenes. We saw them use filmmaking tricks when filming here in backwards and forwards action, which later in the editing room involved shots being mixed together and not necessarily having the same method used in the process. But this leads us straight into the next section of the behind the scenes, which focused on the continuity of the complex action. Like in the Rotaz vault scene, they had to make choices on what perspective to shoot from, such as with both protagonists in both of the reflecting fight scenes. It became much easier to watch as a sequence as it was to make, as there was a combination of back and forward elements in frame. They even had to have additional supervisors on set and visual effects simulators to explain what was going on to the rest of the crew. The cast in this scene, which was primarily John David Washington and his stuntman, had to first work out simple moves of fighting in backwards and forwards motion, with Washington basing his entire training around inversion, which included acting, fighting, and talking in reverse. The other big action sequence in the mid part of the film, which was of course the car chase, adopted many of these on-set principles of filmmaking and involved extra training in a parking lot where stuntmen would flip cars and practice backwards maneuvers. It was impressive to see them train and execute this, especially considering Robert Pattinson, who also drives the car in a lot of these takes on screen. It's evident that Nolan gets the best out of his cast and crew, really trusting them to pull off his vision and elevate it to new heights. Also, although we've already heard loads of details surrounding the plane crash sequence and how it was filmed, I think one of my favourite parts of this section of the featurette was the full IMAX shot shown of this particular moment. We actually see the beginning to end of this plane crash in various full shots, and it was explained that all of the IMAX cameras on set were positioned correctly for one take only. This again shows the depth of planning and the scale which Nolan accomplished with Tenet. The seamlessness of all of these complex scenes really comes across as a visual treat for the audience, and as Nolan himself said, it suspends us further into the disbelief of what is on screen. This leads into the chapters on the practical sets, techniques, and of course the final battle of Stulsk 12. With plenty of behind the scenes footage of the sets and primarily the turnstiles, we get commentary from Christopher Nolan's long-term production designer Nathan Crowley, who acted as a big help in crafting sets that mirror each other. Whether it's the actual mirrored Rotaz vault, the red and blue room, or the mirroring introduction and ending action scenes, Crowley helped design these from initial plans in a garage with Nolan himself. The models became artwork, and the artwork became the fully designed locations that they would shoot in. We also learned during this section that the Stulsk 12 sequence was one of the biggest sets on any film ever, evolving from huge models and following through on set, where we saw painted backgrounds to create depth in the underground shots. But apart from these paintings and the limited enhanced visuals in post-production, everything was filmed for real on location, including the Chinook helicopters which began and ended the scene. They spent 3 weeks filming in the hot desert, alongside setting up the set beforehand, and had to film the whole sequence in forward and reverse like previous scenes of action. It was amazing to see what brought this immersive final battle together, and in particular the work that Nathan Crowley and his team did with setting it up and creating artistic reference to work from. But what aided all of these scenes and was involved in a lot of the final chapters on the making of Tenet involves the music and editing process involved early on and during filming that took place. Like Hans Zimmer on Interstellar, Ludwig Göransson composed music before they began shooting from Nolan's notes on what he wanted the music to feel and sound like. They shared examples of their favourite music and put together something wildly original, pulsating, and a driving force that would make the scenes feel like an authentic action experience. Nolan tried to bring in new and talented people that would really capture this original vibe all the way through to post-production, and having them work before and during filming really helped lift the whole production. It was noted that Nolan listened to tracks composed by Ludwig through his earphones on set, and it helped the director to fully capture the feeling of the scene he wrote on the page. It was also mentioned that in regards to his new editor Jennifer Lame, that the whole project was a hugely difficult task to put together. She had to take 2 sequences and sometimes even 4 when looking at the Rotaz vault scene and construct singular completed parts of the film. Laying out backwards and forwards action and cutting it together really was difficult, and it was stated that Lame was mentally struggling as she assembled the final cut. But with all of these daunting aspects to pull off, the cast and crew took a moment at the end of this featurette to look back on this experience as a memory that they will remember forever. It's one they think has changed cinema and opened up a new way of telling a story through experiential filmmaking. Overall, it will be interesting to see how all of this work pays off in the future as more people watch Tenet and after they've seen the film multiple times. But that was my video discussing some of the behind the scenes featurettes for the making of Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I would definitely recommend buying the Blu-ray or 4K edition of the film to check out some of these special features, as it gives a brilliant deep dive into the production and the ideas that Nolan and his team brought to the table. I must say, watching the film in 4K was also absolutely stunning, and having these special features on top of this was even better. But if you have seen the making of Tenet, don't forget to let me know down below in the comments on what else you picked out alongside your thoughts towards it. You can also check out my full series of Tenet videos, including my explained uploads and video essays, in a playlist on my channel if you haven't seen them already. But for more content on Christopher Nolan, Tenet, and many other films coming out over the next year, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to leave a like rating. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.